Shalom, giving all praise to Yahweh Shem El Shaddai, Shalom Kakwadash, Shalom to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect out there, Shalom to you all. And I'm going to entitle this video, They Know That They're the Ease, and they're scared to death. So this is a video currently live, 66 watching. This is an hour, put up an hour ago. It's still live. Only 66 watching. Shows you how many people are following this guy. Out of how many, he got almost 40,000 subscribers. Nobody's watching him. Anyway, this is a guest. The name of the individual, I looked him up. Well, here it is right here. Charles Fain Layman, Manhattan Institute. So he's from New York. And you know what, let me do? Let me bring this back. And let me just let you listen.
Option would be to say, yes, I am. But you would have him on your survey as a part of the non-black sample. But he's...
Do they represent a real population? Quite possibly. But it's also the case that, again, when you get people taking surveys, like sometimes people just go through a survey and click things as quickly as possible to get to the end. Sometimes they will, like, you know, they'll say things to mess with you. And so my instinct is at least some of that is representative of, that's a measure of the error in my survey that is represented by people engaging in that kind of behavior. So, you know, one plausible estimate of the BHI population is 9% minus that 3%, which is 6%, which is, you know, about 2 million.
It says not, let me see, descendants of biblical 12 tribes is a, I'm sorry, black persons who think that they are descended from the biblical 12 tribes is a raven. I'm sorry, not every black person of the 12 tribes considered descendants from the biblical 12 tribes is a raving anti-Semitic or a radical street preacher. We just, it's not a radical street preacher. We teach the truth. We're not radical. I don't know what that means. I mean, I know what it means, but radical means we speaking, we got a sword swinging, we got guns out, aiming it at people, kicking people in the ass. And it says raving anti-Semitic. First of all, you small hats, we call you 1948ers Jews. Most of the time, majority of the time, they pass by, they might look for a minute and they keep going. Every once in a while, a 48er or a Jew will come up, normally young men, maybe two young men, they'll have the zetas on, and they'll ask questions and we'll give them answers. And it's a dialogue back and forth. We don't say, get out of here, you devil, you know. We just tell them. And then when we go deep, you know, the question and answer and back and forth, you know what when we get to Esau, because they know about Esau and Jacob. When we start talking about Esau, they're looking at their watch and ready to go. So let me bring this back a little bit more. Because I'm going to say this. When you're out there on the highways and the byways and you see these Hasidim, Lababucha, don't even pay them no mind. No, hey you fake, no, just let them walk. If they want to stop and talk to you, then you have an open dialogue with them. You don't curse them out. You don't call them the devil. You might explain to them that they are the devil. Well, you damn devil, I'll kick your ass. No, that's the wrong way to go. Let me read this here. I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't think all the ancient Israelites were black. Nobody's black. Nobody's white. The difference is brown. But some were black and some did go to West Africa where the slaves came from, per Abu Kamar. Okay, so how do you know? How can Abu or Vocab or Mr. Layman here, how can you point to somebody and say, you're an Israelite, you're not an Israelite? Now remember, the Israelites were scattered throughout the whole planet. So we look like everybody. And he did say that. He mentioned GMS. He said GMS, but not just GMS, other camps too. There's certain people members of GMS that look whiter than him, whiter than you, but would be in the camp because it's not primarily about color. The majority of us have the certain look to us, a certain phenotype, but you're going to have some of us that look just like this individual here or this individual right here. So now let me bring it back a little bit more. Let me see what they say.
What we call the error bars, the margin of error on that is pretty wide.
Right.
So
I gotta
it's
come
hard
back
to get a
some
very
more.
precise estimate.
Come
Right?
back some more.
It is the template. It's the Old Testament and the New Testament. The story of the Jews and the story of Jesus are the two sort of key stories.
Okay, I'm
I've never
sorry.
seen that before. So it is a large.
Because this is what I wanted.
It's there.
It's live.
And then
so
almost extrapolate like, okay, what happens when people hear about it? They're more likely than not to believe in it. And so to me, as a Christian apologist, I see part of this as
let me bring it back. I'm going
the
to let you hear
fulfillment
most
of
of it.
the prophecy of Ezekiel 37.
Oh, good.
These
Glad
data,
you
the
said
thing
that.
that
Good.
really jumped out to me is the big skew in that first box
get a
over there,
cookie.
which is just that
Vocab.
basically ask people at the intensity of their agreement, strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, strongly agree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. And the goal of that is to get them to think about their answers and so give you intensity to overcome acquiescence bias. That kind of works, but it
Are you talking about that particular graph
yes,
right there?
Yeah. I always ask in that five format rather than just agree, disagree. And then you also give them neither agree nor disagree so that you don't accidentally collapse people into one or the other.
Is this the most important graph in the report, Charles?
I think in terms of summarizing the key measure, I'd say that one's important, and then the second figure. But the thing that when I first started looking at these data, the thing that really jumped out to me is the big skew in that first box over there, which is just that overwhelmingly my black respondents were much more likely to say yes. Black people are descended from the ancient Israelites. Walking into this, I didn't know what I was going to find.
Right.
I sort of thought maybe there will be no difference. That's why I had a control group, right? Like that's why I had the non-black comparison group, which doesn't show up in the Lifeway survey, because I was like, maybe it's just that lots of people say that. And it turns out there's an independent black effect that being black increases your probability of saying that. And that's interesting. And that says to you there's a real phenomenon going on there above and beyond the non-black population's tendency to agree.
The Hebrew Israelites watching this will say that it's a fulfillment of the prophecy of Ezekiel 37, where the valley of dry bones is there, and Ezekiel sees the dry bones be brought to life in this vision as Yahweh's powers manifest, where the sinews and the muscles come, and there's resurrection, there's life. Hebrew Israelites believe they're in that day where the valley of dry bones is awakening to that fact. And so they would say something probably like this. Even those Khazars recognize we're in that time where we're in the valley of dry bones, the reawakening according to our scripture. Because Khazar sometimes is a slur that they use to describe a Jewish person.
From Khazaria, yeah.
Yeah, the other one that's more specific to One West is Edomite, but that generally covers all white folks, but specifically to Jewish folks, just so you know in the future if you see this, Amalek. They identify specifically Jewish folks because that's a tribe of Esau as Amalekites, and that's just a little thing. This is interesting. One question I did like though on the Philos one was that it had people say, some of them said, "I've never heard of it before." I thought that was interesting because then you can kind of almost see like an awareness that's there. And then almost extrapolate like, okay, what happens when people hear about it? They're more likely than not to believe in it. And so to me, as a Christian apologist, I see part of this as a proactive defensive measure to inoculate people first with truth so that they don't buy into it. Now, I know that's outside of your interest. So I'm just saying.
Oh, and what I would say is, right, this shows up in my survey too. If you go back to that figure that you pulled up, the most important one, you'll see the biggest spikes in particularly in the first section. In both samples, the biggest proportion is people who said they neither agree nor disagree, which means they neither agreed that black people are descended from the ancient Israelites, nor did they disagree, because they had no idea, in many cases, what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, many people, a substantial proportion of respondents, I think it was like a quarter of my respondents, didn't know. Like, I introduced them, I have a whole paragraph being like, the ancient Israelites, those guys in the Bible, the 12 tribes, Egypt, they leave, they go to Israel. And a quarter of them were like, I don't know what you're talking about.
It sounds
So
like
they don't have that knowledge.
Romulans.
Right, exactly. So they don't have that knowledge. And then also, I asked them, do you think the black people are descended from them? And they go, what the heck are you talking about? I have no idea. And that's a large portion of the population, right? Like, most people, when I talked about this survey with friends and family, half of them said, what's a Hebrew Israelite? And I said, you know, there's guys who scream on the street corner. They go, I've never seen that before. So it is a lot of people. I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah. Real quick, shout out to Larry Love for the super chat. What's up, Larry Love? Thank you very much. And also, thank you, Doki Doki Bible Club, for the channel memberships. Appreciate that. Going down here, I'm going to read this, and if you could comment. A few things emerged from data. One is that black respondents were appreciably more likely than non-black respondents to say that other black people were descended from the ancient Israelites. 43% of the black sample somewhat or strongly agree that black Americans are descended from the Israelites versus 29% of the non-black sample, while 13% of the black respondents somewhat or strongly disagree that Jews are descended from the Israelites versus 6% of the non-black sample. In other words, some people, both black and non-black, will agree with both claims, but agreement with both is about twice as likely in the black population versus the non-black. And that's why scholars, part of this, what you're saying and quantifying here, is why scholars do still call this black Israelism, because the driving factor is that. And then I know you're not doing sort of the history of the movement per se, but when you go back and look at really the Protestants who came out with this because they had visions, Reverend William Christian, who is very rarely mentioned in the literature. Dorman, of course, knows who he is. And William Crowdy, who is frequently mentioned in the literature. F.S. Cherry, who should not be mentioned in the literature as a founding father, but has to do with the whole thing about how he fabricated his bio. But F.S. Cherry is not a founder. He's important, but not a founder within this. And they were contemporaries. Christian and Crowdy knew each other. And it's interesting to see the developments. Some scholars talk about 4 waves of this thing, and we're in this distinct wave right now that's got an increase with the internet age and certain like tensions that have been heightened, and it's really grown as a result of that. And I know you mentioned about people in the corner. I know you're not gauging this stuff, but the sort of moderate or non-One West faction of Hebrew Israelism is really growing, and it's sort of harder to visibly observe as well. But there's a lot more of those folks, and I think over time we're going to see this religion institutionalize. I think give it time. You'll see a college, because this always happens, right? BYU. You know, who would have thought Joseph Smith? Now you'd have BYU, right? But I don't know if you want to comment on that.
No, well, so you know what I'd say, and this is something I wanted to say earlier. You know, you talk about the origins in.
I'm looking for an opening, y'all. I just want you to listen. I'm looking for an opening.
In English Israelism or Anglo-Israelism, right? This idea that actually the British are the lost tribes, or a lost tribe. And, you know, it is helpful that the story of the Jews is like, it contains this out where it's like, what happened to 10 of the 12 tribes? We don't know. They just vanished. So it's very.
I'm glad he said that. What happened to the other 10 tribes? Really, it should be 11 tribes, because in the land of Palestine, they call themselves Jews, meaning Judah, unless they mean Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Some of them call themselves Levi. I'm from Levi. Not too many call themselves Benjamin, although the president, the premier, the leader, the king, Benjamin Netanyahu, is maybe he's saying he's a Benjaminite. Well, that's the name of one of the tribes. So he made a good statement. What happened to the other 10 tribes?
Readily available, but it's also just the case that, like, you know, I feel like I said,
this back a little
people
bit.
In the corner. I know you're not gauging this stuff, but the sort of moderate or non-One West faction of Hebrew Israelism is really growing, and it's sort of harder to visibly observe as well. But there's a lot more of those folks, and I think over time we're going to see this religion institutionalize. I think give it time. You'll see a college, because this always happens, right? BYU. You know, who would have thought Joseph Smith? Now you'd have BYU, right? But I don't know if you want to comment on that.
No, well, so you know what I'd say, and this is something I wanted to say earlier. You know, you talk about the origins in English Israelism or Anglo-Israelism, right? This idea that actually the British are the lost tribes, or a lost tribe, and you know.
So you can understand what he's talking about is a Christian identity movement featured in the Megiddo report. I have the whole report, the Megiddo report. You can go on, you can get on PDF file. The whole report, Megiddo, before the year 2000. They mentioned the Christian identity movement, which another term or label is for Christian identity movement is a British Israelism, meaning that the 12 tribes are different Europeans, like the Danish are one tribe, that's the tribe of Dan, Manassas, the people of England and the white people of America. This was made popular during the time of the World Tomorrow. I forget the guy's name. He died years ago. He was up in age any damn way. I forget his name, but he had a book, and it broke down that book. And I actually ordered the book. I got the book. They don't charge you for it. And they say, the different Europeans scattered throughout the world, those are the different tribes.
It is helpful that the story of the Jews is like, it contains this out where it's like, what happened to 10 of the 12 tribes? We don't know. They just vanished. So it's very.
They mainly came to North, Central, and South America, and also scattered throughout the world. Like I said in the past, said in many videos, that when Christopher Columbus came over here to the New World, that's why this is called the New World, as opposed to the Old World. The people that he encountered were Israelites, were the 10 tribes. And many of the people, and you can do the research, don't go by my word, do the research yourself. When the religious, I'll say fathers, the church fathers of the Europeans that came over here to the Americas, a lot of them said these are Israelites. And a lot of them knew that these were the 10 tribes.
Very readily available, but it's also just the case that, like, I forget if I said this in the tablet piece, but this, in many senses, the story of the Jews is the story of Western civilization, right? It is the template. It's the Old Testament and the New Testament. The story of the Jews and the story of Jesus are the two sort of key stories of the Western inheritance. And so it is unsurprising that people will look for ways that they or their group can participate more directly, not by analogy.
There it is right there. Yep. There are Brits who swear they are the real Hebrews. And some of them are.
Literally in those stories. The sort of I think that there is something very accessible about, very logical, rational about going, particularly given the analogies between the Black American experience and the historical Jewish experience, saying, maybe there's a connection between these two groups. They both.
And this is a threat to them. This is a threat. It's a not so much not a physical threat. It's a intellectual threat, truth threat. Because a lot of them are thinking, what if they're right? What if they are the Israelites? They got to be saying that. You got to be saying that. What if these people are the Israelites?
Liberated from bondage, and they rose and formed a great nation. Like that, that connection is intuitive. So it's unsurprising to me that those ideas have purchase.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. And then, because when you look at the founding of America, you'll see people talking about being this city on a hill that cannot be hidden, and sort of looking at as America as a new Israel, to be a light into the world. These are more within the Puritan section, of course, but they're readily available. It was by analogy, though. By and large, they weren't literally saying they were Israelites or anything like that, of course. And then on the other side, it wasn't a promised land because they were in captivity. You have folks who are relating to Israelites in captivity, of course. But it was by analogy. But it essentially became literalized. And, that's a key passage Israelites use is Deuteronomy 28. They'll say, we fulfill the curses. Our nation has inherited these curses that were given for disobeying. Those other guys they don't got the curses. And it's funny because the Brits would say British Empire is inheriting the blessings. So they found a different way, and of course they were the antecedent, to be identified this way. Biblical Christian Steve, I appreciate your super chat. I'll put it on the screen, but I'm going to disagree with your comment. Abu Kamar doesn't think that unless you're defining it in a very sort of loose type of way. But nonetheless, I appreciate the support, so shout out to you. Okay, so keep on looking through this. 9%. I mean, would you say that equals 1.5, 1.8 million adherents? Can you say that or no?
9%. Gosh, there are 40 million black people, so 10% of that is 10% of that is closer to 4 million round down a little bit. It's like 3 and change. Although again, what does that mean? Probably only some subset.
So he's saying that as you can read, he's saying if there's 40% black Americans, that 10% identify with, being Hebrew Israelites or BHIs or Israelism, that would mean that there's a solid 4 million Jakes that identify with being Israelites. So that's something to be nervous about.
Of those are sort of strong adherents. You could get somebody who says, yes, I'm a black Hebrew Israelite and I agree with these things, but I'm not an adherent. I think if you dug into that 9%, you would see a spectrum of commitment even there.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know what the most accurate data is to get to say what's the size of the black population in America. So that's
why about 13% of the U.S. population would call themselves black on the census.
Right, but then the question is at least for me, it's like, how do you define that? But anyway, so you would say closer to 4 million.
Yes, that would be within my category of people who are answering yes to these 3 questions. That's about 9% of the black sample. But the what we call the error bars, the margin of error on that is pretty wide.
Right.
So, it's hard to get a very precise estimate.
Can I comment on the thing that I've highlighted? The idea that 3% of non-black people identify as BHIs may be confusing. If I could give a comment on that,
yeah,
I would submit it comes from a few factors. One is people who are Hispanic or Native American or something like that get included into some version of a chart. So there's an official 12 tribes chart made by REI back in the 70s or so, but there's other versions of that as well. Not all groups even use that, by the way, but some have reconfigured it. For example, GOCC would include under Naphtali, Pacific Island.
The GOCC are complete bug outs, and it's a bugged out church organization with a Hebrew Israelite twist. We don't even talk. None of the IUIC doesn't. They're like not even in the circle. They're persona non grata. They're no person.
So they could answer this and say, I'm an Israelite. And they might answer yes because there's no other way to answer a black Israelite. And they would be part of the non-blacks saying, I still think I'm one of the sins, but they're under the larger rubric of the religion still. So that's one way. The other is actually white folks who are allowed to be in some of these groups and are viewed as members of the congregation. Israel of God has a bunch of white members. Charles Dow's group and Straightway, they have a lot of ex-NFL players. They got a bunch. GOCC has a bunch. Even GMS has people that they would say, well, yeah, they look white, but they're not really white. They're still part of us, and they'll be restored to the natural look in the kingdom, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, look, I don't know if this guy could actually be one of the 12 tribes of Israel. He got a Jew look. He's got a Jew look to him. He looks more Italian or whatever, because his mother's Siciliano. But he would look, well, you got the beard there, so he can look like a rabbi or something. But he got a look, when you look at him, he doesn't so much look like an Italian, Sicilian, but he looks like a Jew. So, but he can actually be an Israelite. So how you get around that? Oh, it's all about color with you guys. Nope. You got members of the GMS, a bunch of members of GMS that look whiter than this guy. What does this precept come to mind? Jeremiah 12:9. speckled bird. Cake unturned in Hosea for Ephraim. Ephraim is a cake unturned.
So that may count for it, some of those, because you do see that, and I bet it is about 3%. I bet that's about right.
Yeah, I mean, my instinct is just, and I talked about it there, like that 3%, that's 13 people in a survey. Like, so maybe do they represent a real population? Possibly. But it's also the case that, again, when you get people taking surveys, like sometimes people just go through a survey and click things as quickly as possible to get to the end. Sometimes they will, like, they'll say things to mess with you. And so my instinct is at least some of that is representative of, let's say, measure of the error in my survey that is represented by people engaging in that kind of behavior. So, one plausible estimate of the BHI population is 9% minus that 3%, which is 6%, which is about 2 million.
So I hear you, but I don't think so, because I deal with these guys, and I can tell you that makes a lot of sense. About 3% of them probably are non-black, maybe more, to be honest. Like in Phoenix, the leader of IUIC, that's the purple and gold guys, the leader is a Hispanic guy. So he's gonna answer, but he would have to, if he took this, his only option would be to say, yes, I am. But you would have him on your survey as part of the non-black sample. But he's literally a leader in the largest One West group in America. So that's
odd.
I'm just telling you that's a lot more.
Yeah, no, I believe you.
And then even going back to the history of the movement, William Crowdy, one of his right-hand men was a man named Bishop Grove. Bishop Grove was a white guy. So, so I'm just saying. So this is very fascinating. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say I buy it. I am. When in doubt, I assume that when in doubt, if I find it a weird result, I assume it's something wrong with the survey rather than picking up something weird. Just because that's like the parsimonious explanation. Goes back to the point you were making earlier about trying to be cautious in science. So you may very, very well be right. Okay. My instinct is always to assume that I have not found anything interesting.
Gotcha. Well,
I assume that I'm boring as a researcher.
Well, this is very insightful. This is something I need your help on, and I'm trying to have the audience understand this. I didn't really understand what this is. I think it has to do with feelings of basically, do you like Jews or not? But where do you have a category of Esau in here?
Well, so and that's sort of weird because it's spelled out a little more in the report. So basically, once I'm identified by Black Hebrew Israelites, I ask them some questions to try to measure: are they anti-Semitic and are they supportive of violence? And this is in the anti-Semitic section. I do two different things, and the anti-Semitic section is really interesting. On the one hand, I do what's called a set of feelings thermometers, where I basically say how warm or cold do you feel towards a bunch of different groups on a scale from 0 to 100, and my Black Hebrew Israelites are actually warmer towards Jews than my non-Black Hebrew Israelites. That's interesting.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Because we're about truth. We're about truth. If a so-called Jew rolls up with the tzitzis on and we start talking, we'll have a conversation with him. Hey, when Vocab and his motley crew rolled up on us, it was a conversation for about a good hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, but how are they defining Jews?
Well, you're right. That's hard. I try to prompt them. I try to say like Jews as referred to conventionally by Americans, but no, that is that is a measurement issue here that's hard to get around. But that should contaminate the second set of questions. So I go, okay, let me ask you a set of beliefs about Jews, and you tell me if you agree.
Let me go to the scripture right here. I believe it's Romans. It's got to be Romans 12. I was thinking Romans 8. Romans 12. And I believe it's the 19th verse or thereabouts. It's 18th verse. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. So that's why he made the statement that he made. He said, surprisingly, the Hebrew Israelites, they're less, show less, what words did he use? aggression or hate towards the
Agree or
Jays.
disagree with them. So what I gotta find the exact wording. I ask them, do you agree or disagree? Jews are more loyal to Israel than to America. It is appropriate for opponents of Israel's policies and actions to boycott Jewish American-owned businesses in their communities. Jews in the United States have too much power. Relative to other white people, Jews are significantly more involved in and profited more from the transatlantic slave trade.
And there's information on that. Slave ships, a lot of them were owned by Jays. It's hard to find on Google, but if you go back, I don't know, 8 years, you find all that information. So everything that we say, we try our very best to bring out the receipts.
Jews are descended from Esau, the brother of the biblical Jacob, rather than Jacob as is commonly claimed. Jews are descended from Satan. What you see is that so what you see is that across the board, being an issue here that's hard to get around, but that should contaminate the second set of questions. So I go, okay, let me ask you a set of beliefs about Jews, and you tell me if you agree or disagree with them. So what I gotta find the exact wording. I ask them, do you agree or disagree? Jews are more loyal to Israel than to America. It is appropriate for opponents of Israel's policies and actions to boycott Jewish American-owned businesses in their communities. Jews in the United States have too much power. Relative to other white people, Jews are significantly more involved in and profited more from the transatlantic.
They have a lot of power. They have a lot of power, especially the lawyered up ones. They have a lot of power, and that was proven with Kyrie Irving. All he did was watch a movie and said that he liked the movie, and all of a sudden they hung him on the stake and was ready to burn him. You know, Kanye West went from a billionaire in 1 day, or in 2 days, from a billionaire to a millionaire. He lost billions because he criticized these people. That shows you how much power. And then I didn't even notice the commissioner of the NBA. The commissioner of the NBA happens to be a J. And by the way, he said, he made the statement. He said, I don't see Irving being an anti-Semite. That's what he said.
Slave trade. Jews are descended from Esau, the brother of the biblical Jacob, rather than Jacob as.
Why all of a sudden they're talking about Jacob and Esau? Because of us. Nobody was talking about Jacob and Esau before we came on the YouTube. This is when this thing opened up, when we came on the YouTube. And we were the first group to bring out, them other groups wasn't bringing out Jacob and Esau. We were bringing out Jacob and Esau. Y'all know about Jacob and Esau by GMS.
As is commonly claimed, Jews are descended from Satan. What you see is that across the board, being in either of my groups that say somebody is maybe a Black Hebrew Israelite is associated with being more likely to agree with their statements.
I just thought this was so funny. Like, this has got to be the first survey with Esau up in here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my respondents were just like, what are you talking about? I don't show the don't knows, but a lot of my respondents were just like, I don't know. I have no idea who you're talking about, because nobody knows who Esau. I mean, I know who Esau. You know who Esau is. But lots of people do not have that level of biblical literacy.
I'm sorry. I get so annoyed with it's sad and depressing how out to lunch a lot of America is about what I really think should be basically understood issues. It's just,
yeah, they should basically understand that we are the people, and you guys are scared.
Anyways, that's another issue. Well, I didn't realize how long I've had you on here. I feel like I've got to sort of ask you about this one set of questions here that I also didn't understand. This idea of not more likely of being violent towards Jews, but more likely to support political violence. I don't think I really understood what you meant by that. Can you help me out?
Sure. So I ask, I wanted to say basically, is there an association with might commit violent acts? That's like the real reason to be concerned about Hebrew Israelism. And I say, okay, I'm going to ask you two batteries of questions. One of my batteries is going to say, imagine a situation where an adult man punches another adult male stranger, in which situations is it justified? If the stranger was in a protest march, if he was drunk and bumped into the man's wife on a street, if the stranger was beating up a woman, if the stranger had broken into the other man's house. And on those questions, what I call interpersonal violence, Black Hebrew Israelites do not, or they look exactly like non-Black Hebrew Israelites. There's no statistical difference. And then I ask a second set of questions, which I call the political violence questions, which is basically, what do you think about the use of force or violence in the following situations? To advance an important political objective that you support, to oppose the government when it does not share your beliefs, or to prevent discrimination based on race or ethnicity. And there, Hebrew Israelites look much more like, look statistically different from, are more likely to agree with those questions. And so what I conclude from this is I'm like, on a personal level, a Black Hebrew Israelite is not more likely to be like, yeah, I should go beat somebody up. But when you ask him, do you think that your ideas can justify violence? Do you think that politics can justify violence? He's more likely to say yes. This returns to that. Returns to that idea that, we shouldn't understand Hebrew Israelism as, just sort of like a manifestation of hatred, right? It isn't just like, I hate Jews and therefore I'm a Hebrew Israelite. It's a complicated ideology that has sort of political or socio-political connotations. And it is a part of, and this returns to the point from earlier in the show, this American tradition of sort of wacky political beliefs. It's a particular manifestation thereof.
So what would it look like practically if someone's more prone to political violence against Jewish folks? Does that mean? I'm trying not to.
And the question isn't just about Jews; it's about everybody.
Anybody? Okay.
I don't specify Jews. Yeah, it's like if you one question is like how.
I'm looking for an opening, y'all. So bear with me.
One set of questions is trying to measure how much do you think it's cool to get in a fight at the bar? How much do you think?
The Israelites can't do that. The scriptures speak about chambering. If you were a guy in a camp and you go to a bar or a club and you get into a fight, and you shouldn't be there in the first goddamn place. All right? We'll not tolerate that. We'll give you a tongue lashing. But if you're a guy that's in the camp and you go to the club and you getting in fights and you doing this and you hanging out with niggas in the street, we're gonna say, look, you're not a part of us, man.
Think that like violence is chill. And the other set of questions is, are you willing to fight and die for your beliefs? Do you think that violence is justified if the government is oppressing you? And those are two different tendencies, right? The guy who thinks it's okay to get in a bar fight doesn't necessarily think that like taxes means he should rebel, and vice versa.
Right.
And my argument is that Black Hebrew Israelites go in the latter category, in the political violence category, but they shouldn't be understood as going in the former category, in the just like we like to beat people up category.
That's interesting because I wonder what that practically would mean if that's the case. Exactly.
So my interest there, right, is that there are high profile. I'm part of the source of my interest. I think about public safety. There are high profile incidents of Hebrew Israelite violence or Hebrew Israelite acts of terror. And the question is, why is that? Is it because Hebrew Israelism causes people to think that, just sort of being violent in general is cool? Or is it because Hebrewism...
And the only incident of violence was this thing, how many years ago? 5 years ago? 6 years ago? This guy over there in New Jersey with a woman, and they blamed it on us. Come to find out, I don't have the receipts, but I heard Bishop Nathaniel, he made the statement in one of his lives on Saturday. This was maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, that the guy was a Muslim, that the guy wasn't even an Israelite. So that's the only thing. So you gotta watch some Hebrew Israelites. You see what they did to that sinner. No, you ain't gonna hear that. All right. If it at all possible, live peaceably with all men.
Encourages violence towards a political end, and my claim is that in those cases, it's because they're ideologically motivated, and so you don't have to worry as a policymaker. Maybe you're not worried about like Hebrew Israelites picking fights in the streets, but you might be worried.
Yeah, you'd be going off, and if any former One Wester does that, that means that the Most High is really not dealing with them. because you're not supposed to be physical. Romans 12 again. If they persecute you in one city, then flee into another. Wipe the dust off your garments, off your sandals. Because a lot of these younger guys are coming to this thing, coming to it like it's a gang mentality. You ain't supposed to have a gang mentality.
About them carrying out a targeted stabbing, for example. And those are different threat models. If you're thinking about Hebrew Israelism as an extremist problem, your threat model is different depending on which tendency they lean towards.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting. Very interesting stuff. Man, I wish we could go on and on forever, but we can't. Are you doing any more stuff or prompting people to do any more stuff related to Hebrew?
So they want us to do this crazy shit so they can say we got to do something about these Hebrew Israelites. Because they're just beating people up and kicking. They killed somebody, and some Israelite had a car with fringes on the car. His actual brother had a car with fringes on it. Not in GMS. I don't know who the guy was. But he had put fringes on his car. Guy came and ran somebody over, and he was a Hebrew Israelite because he had fringes and a border blue on his car. Or the situation in Chicago with the Palestinian and the Wi-Fi fighting. You know what happened? Then you had Ming the Merciless come on there talking about we got to go out there and bring cans. That's not the attitude that you're supposed to be in. If it's hot out there, you see protests and shit is getting dicey out there. You just back up and leave. Go someplace else. You got a camera.
Israelism in the future?
I'd like to, as it comes up, I will. I'll admit right now a lot of my focus is on other areas. I'm working a lot on drug policy these days. But it'll come back into the news and it'll come back to my attention. So I'd like to revisit it at some point.
Why hasn't anyone interviewed you about this?
Great. Hey, look, anyone wants to interview me, I basically always say yes. I never say no to interviews. It's a weakness. And the other thing is, I read a lot about hate crime. I was just in the Atlantic writing about hate crime, so that's obviously topical.
But has anyone tapped you yet and said, "Hey, good press release, let's get you on"? Has anyone had a conversation with you?
I've talked to a couple of folks about this, but nobody at length, unfortunately.
Like not even
except for this interview, which is great.
I hope you get more. It's perplexing to me, like how no one is gonna care or be aware.
My 2 cents is, part of.
Okay, so this is him, as you can see. He has a X account from formerly Twitter. Charles Fain Layman. So here's a couple of articles. The most effective way to reduce hate crimes. So you gotta do the research on this guy.
Part of being, as you well know, part of being a public commentator is you talk into the void a lot. That's just my life. That's how it goes. And you can just sort of hope that somebody listens. But then the second thing is, look, I do think that, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, there's this dominant way of thinking about extremism and saying, the primary issue is this very narrow subset of extremists. So my response is, those people are concerned, but we have to widen our window a little bit. We have to think.
Okay, I got to listen to this. Redacted is live, breaking. They're planning a military coup. The P is silence against Trump, and they're admitting it because he won the Iowa caucus hands down. So they're pretty much saying this guy is going to be the nominee, for the presidency of the United States. So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there's going to be an attempted assassination or what. And the Democrats are not backing up Biden. You know? So it's getting hot. Getting hot. Matthew 24, wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes in diverse places.
Think about other people. And I think that there's not appetite as of yet to do that, but I'd like to keep trying to sort of widen that window to the best of my ability.
Okay. So in the report here, I'm going to show people how to download it. If it's
Yeah, please.
real quick, everyone. So look, you can.
Yeah, it's the end of the interview, whatever. But we gotta watch. They watch us. They both spoke about. He spoke about Jacob and Esau. Where you think he got that from? He's watching us. Let me go to the notifications here. GMS Atlanta, GMS Atlanta, devout servants, get ready to walk through that fire, bro. Yeah, things are getting hot. Spiritually, literally, figuratively. Useless generation. Oh, wait a minute. I gotta check this out. Largest deployment of NJ soldiers to Middle East region. Multitudes in the Valley of Decision. So we gotta listen to this.
Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Racha HaKodash. Double honor to the apostles of Great Millstone. Honors, salutations, and blessings to the house of David, which is the elect, starting with the 144,000 prophets that are preaching the gospel of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai in all sincerity, diligence, and truth, and to the rest of the men, women, and children that are listening and learning, staying in the Holy Spirit, and keeping the faith of Yahweh Shai day in and day out.
Oh, look, this guy right here. He's down. He's gun ho for Babylon the Great. Got no better. And you know how when you come into this, and you're an Israelite for X amount of years. When you look at another Israelite man with no hair on his face, it's like a guy walking around butt naked and doesn't realize it. It's a disgusting sight. Oh, Dr. Brown has a mustache. Where's the rest of his beard? Does he keep the laws? Yes, I keep the laws. Where's your beard at? New Jersey soldiers prepare for deployment to Syria and Iraq. Trenton, New Jersey, CBS, soldiers from New Jersey are joining the fight against Islamic whatever.
So this is just a real quick article. Came across it a couple of days ago. I wanted to touch on it before, but through the Spirit, the Lord just have it come out right now. This is coming from CBS News. It says New Jersey soldiers prepare for deployment to Syria and Iraq. Okay, it says soldiers from New Jersey are joining the fight against an Islamic militant group in the Middle East. This will be the largest deployment of New Jersey Army National Guard soldiers since 2008. Okay, and I just find this the timing, it's no coincidence that you have the whole Red Sea, escalations with the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran and the 48ers. Now you have U.S. and UK and other countries that are part of that coalition that are over there. And now you have America sending more troops or more soldiers to that region. All right. And, this is something that, according to prophecy, we understand, was bound to happen because the scriptures tells us.
Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. Matter of fact, let me do it this way. I'm going to cheat. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining.
Us that these troops, they were going to go, they were.
Prophecies coming to pass. This could be the year of Jacob's trouble. Joel 2. Excuse me. But I will remove far off from you the northern army. The northern army represents North America, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, a desert, with his face toward the east sea, that's Euphrates, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea, that's the Red Sea, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. Let's pull out a few words. Stench, foul odor, and that's from dead bodies. That's from dead bodies. They're going to decompose over there in the Middle East. Here it goes, Isaiah 34:3. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. Ill savor. So they're going to. The word there is tazachana, which means stench, foul odor.
Going to be sent. American, military men, all right, and women were going to be sent over to that region. All right, and them being sent to that region isn't for them to come back victorious. It's not for them to become heroes or receive a Purple Heart for their courageous and honorable fighting. It's ultimately for them to die over there. Okay, so it says Lieutenant Colonel Omar Minute.
Yeah, they're going to empty this land of all military. There's something major is going to happen where they're going to empty the land of all military. You're going to have the National Guards, the what do you call it? The Coast Guard, the National Guards, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, which includes the Navy SEALs, the Green Beret if they're still around, Special Forces. A lot of these police officers are going to be called back to duty. What was the term during the Bush? I believe it was stop loss or something like that, where they had judges that were in their 40s and 50s. They had to go to the Middle East during the time of the Bush administration, the second Bush, baby Bush. So these people that have did their time in the military and they're retired, they got their purple medals or whatever, they're going to be called back. It's going down, y'all.
Army note, is among 1,500 New Jersey Army National Guard soldiers deploying to Iraq and Syria. This is his 5th deployment to the Middle East, he said. Now, they've been over there fighting in Iraq for, over a decade. Okay? You had, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Obama declared.
Well, let me go back to the early 90s. So we're talking about, Daddy Bush, and then you had Daddy Bush, then you had Clinton, then you had Baby Bush. So the 91, 92. The Desert Storm was 92. So we're talking about 90, 2000, 2010, 2020. We're talking about 30 years, over 3 decades. His deployment is part of Operation Inherent Resolve, a military campaign to defeat ISIS. We have the people we need. We have the training that we need. We have the equipment that we need to fight and win. We're not going to win this one.
Declare the war against Iraq, victorious, or maybe it was George W. Bush. I'm not too sure, but that was over,
it was Daddy Bush, because I remember it.
A decade ago, or around so. So why are you sending your largest deployment of soldiers coming from New Jersey over there?
Because they're going to fulfill prophecy. Of course, I'm just saying it to the audience.
Now, all right, they do a lot of these different deployments under the guise of for some other reason, but ultimately it's all brewing up to this the valley of the multitudes, okay, or the valley of decisions, as it is written in the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter. It says his deployment is part of Operation Inherent Resolve, a military campaign to defeat ISIS. and they've been constantly using ISIS as a boogeyman, as the face of the reason why they got to go over there. But that has become a broken record. All right, ISIS over in the Middle East, it does not threaten the American or the American living standards or living conditions. It's not a threat to America. All right, I'll just put it like that. So why are they really deploying the largest largest Army National Guard since 2008? What is the real reason? All right, it says we have the people we need, we have the training we need, we have the equipment that we need to fight and win, Minot said. Ahead of the deployment, military families watched as New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy and other officials honored the soldiers from the 44th Infantry Brigade combat team at a special ceremony Sunday in Trenton. By doing your part to support Operation Inherent Resolve, you are protecting peace and prosperity. not only for our state, not only for our country, but for the entire free world, Murphy said. So yeah, they make these speeches, say these things just to ship them off to go over there and
Yeah, because they don't understand that they're a part of prophecy. These people they showed you the Jake with no hair on his head, no hair on his face, look like he can bench 700 pounds, you know, look like he can do 100 pull-ups. You know, he's a, you know, the best soldiers are Jake any damn way. They love it, but he doesn't realize he's going to fulfill prophecy, and the prophecy that I've mentioned in particular was Joel chapter 2. So this is it, man. But you know, this is not gonna. It's not gonna go down until the planet Earth is sea hipped. We keep bringing that up.
you know, ultimately they're gonna die there. Right? Let's get a quick scripture. This is the book of Second Esdras. All right, chapter 16, verse. Let's start at verse 33. It says, "The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms, and the women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. In the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish of famine." Okay? So it says, in the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed. What wars are we talking about? What the wars that we are currently living in right now,
Because men go to war. Men go to war. And then when there's few men out there, that's when one man has many women. 7 women shall take hold of one man. A man shall be more precious than fine gold, even a golden wedge of Ophir. Anyway, with that I'm going to say Shalom. And you can watch the rest of this video. Very good video. It's only 20 minutes long. You can subscribe to him. Stay in the Spirit 144. So anyway, with that I'm going to say Shalom.